Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to allow just a few moments to give everyone a chance to log on and join us from the waiting room. While we're doing that, please note I'll be monitoring all of the Q&A and chat boxes. So if you have any questions or need help troubleshooting your video or audio, you can refer to the chat box and I'll assist you with that. At the end of today's presentation, we will email you a recording and share any resources mentioned today in an email with you as well. With that said, I'll pass it to our president of SREB, Dr. Pruitt.
Thank you, Jasmine. Welcome all of you to a great conversation that we're going to have today with three of the governors from the SREB states. We appreciate them and giving us their time, and we appreciate you coming to listen to a great conversation that I believe is going to be very worthwhile. It'll also give us a good picture of where we're headed as we come out of COVID. Now, this is the third in a series of moving onward. We have actually had a couple of these already. One was around post-secondary and one was around teacher preparation. So we wanted to clean up here with our power folks, and let's listen to them as they tell us about where they see their states going as we move out of recovery and into a better place. So first, I'd like to start by introducing the chair of the Southern Regional Education Board. He has graciously agreed to do it for a second year. We are so happy to have Governor John Carney. Both of his parents were educators, so education has been a very important part of his life for his entire life. And every time I've ever talked to him, I've heard him very clearly say that he just believes that each child deserves a quality education. And as governor, he has made it a real point to ensure that Delaware's children have the tools necessary to be successful. He has served in the House of Representatives, and he's served 2 terms as Delaware's Lieutenant Governor. Governor Carney, thank you so much. And I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to introduce Governor Kemp when he comes on at 2:15. And also I want to make sure everybody is aware that Governor Ivey from Alabama, I'll do a more in-depth introduction of Governor Ivey in just a moment. So Governor Carney, how have you really approached this task of moving to recovery in your role as governor? What do you see as the most pressing education and workforce issues that you're going to have to deal with?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for asking me to serve again. I didn't do much in the first year because of COVID, and so I thought that I owed SREB a full year of work, and it's good to be back. It's good to be here on my screen anyway with Governor Ivey of Alabama. Governor Kemp, I know, is coming in. I'm a big college football fan, so we're here with the 2 big heavyweights in Georgia and Alabama. It's good to be with both of them and to hear their thoughts as well. I know the case across the country is that we're getting healthier. COVID is on retreat, if you will. We're getting to a place where people are different states or different places, but getting back to what I call a new normal. I think our biggest challenge here in the state of Delaware was to get as much education, as much learning to our students as possible over the last year plus. There was a lot of pressure back in March. Our first executive order was on March the 11th of last year. There was a lot of pressure quickly thereafter to close our schools down as the uncertainty spread about this COVID-19 and the threat that it posed for our teachers and staff, and most importantly, for our students. One of the things that we learned here in Delaware was that schools were among the safest places in our state. They were safe because the younger children were less at risk of getting the virus. And if they did, it was less serious than it would be for my mother, who's 90 years old, living by herself, and others, senior populations like that. Initially, we didn't know that. And so there was a lot of concern about how we could do schooling, how our children could learn in a way that was safe for everybody involved. And so we moved into a mixed environment, some remote learning, some in-person instruction, and some hybrid, a mix of the two. And teachers and staff and everybody did their best. Parents, daycare centers, many of which we had to keep open because we had essential employees in our state. We put a lot of the federal resources into keeping our daycares open. Teachers, obviously, with children fell into that category. The hardest thing I think that we had to do as governors, in addition to communicating to the public what the situation was and what we had to do, and frankly, getting people to follow us. I've been listening to former Speaker of the House, John Boehner's book, and one of his quotes in that book that really struck home to me is, "A leader without followers is just a man or woman out for a walk." And if you can't get folks to follow you, I'm sure Governor Kemp and Governor Ivey can relate to this, then you're not going to do much leading. I'm fortunate here in Delaware, we have a very small state, just short of 1 million people. We have a political culture where people know one another. They expect to meet you, see you in the grocery store, at the Little League baseball game. So it's a little bit easier, I think, for a governor here to communicate in a way. I can get all the hospitals in the state on the same conference call on a weekly basis. Same thing with the superintendents of our school district, and I did. And so we work very closely. We are very rooted, as most states are, in local control of the schools. Under a state of emergency, frankly, the superintendents wanted me to take the heat for shutting things down, for the mask wearing. We thought that children wouldn't wear the mask. They adapted better than the adults, frankly. And I remember I have an elementary school right down the street from where I live, driving past one morning, and one of the buses coming up, I looked, and every little face had a little mask on, and it was a problem that was anticipated that didn't occur. We didn't have much spread in the classrooms at all, and we kept track of all that, and that made it a little bit easier as we moved into last fall to bring more students back into in-person instruction in our classrooms. And that was, as I told everybody in our state, the biggest challenge to date that we faced there is getting people comfortable. Some districts were a little bit ahead of others. Most districts allowed parents to make that decision as to whether they wanted to be in person or remote. And most districts had the flexibility within the physical environments of their schools to do that. And so we made it through there. The other hard things after we said, look, we closed down in December to take a pause, basically to convince the establishment that we were opening in January, no matter what, because schools were really safe places. And we kind of said, forget about everything we told you up to this point. Here's the data now. Here's what we're going to do. Obviously, the local districts, made choices based on their own, the comfort level of parents and teachers. And I think we muddled through. The big question for us, though, now is, how do we take the next step? And we've done a lot of planning going into that. Our goal is 100% in-person instruction next September, with a lot of work this summer to help those students who had not all the learning they needed, remediation, if you will. I know the professional class doesn't refer to it that way. Lost learning, I think. Here we call it acceleration. Whatever it is, we need to get kids back where they need to be, whether it's reading at grade level of grade 3, doing math by proficiently in middle school, and graduating on time to go into the workforce or on to higher education. Those are our 3 major goals, and that's where we're focused. We've got a great trajectory. Most of our work has been working with a work group that included the Department of Education, Governor's Office staff, and representatives of the superintendents. Again, small state like Delaware, we can do that and get everybody in the same room or on the same Zoom call. Number 1, we've got to assess the learning that was lost. Number 2, we've got to put in opportunities to make up that learning both during the summer and next year. We're going to focus a lot on intense tutoring. So one-on-one, reading, math, whatever the case may be, making sure that that the students get their assessment tests before the year is out so that we can put them on a pathway to catch up or to accelerate forward. It's going to be a big challenge. It's most important. I know you want to talk eventually about workforce development. Our success as states, we all know it, depends on the quality of our schools and the quality of our workforce. I can talk more about that. I'm lost my time check here, but
You're okay. We got a couple more minutes.
that's really critically important. Let me tell you a quick story. And I know Governor Ivey and Governor Kemp know the same thing. Not long after I was elected governor, after 6 of the most unproductive years in my public service in the U.S. Congress, that was a joke, but not. We had an economic development summit in the middle part of our state. And one of the sessions was with site selectors. And these are mostly consultants who work with big companies as to where to locate their facilities. And we had a conversation. I was kind of the moderator. And I asked them, what was the most important factor? Was it taxes, regulations, all the various different things? Number one, far and away, quality of the workforce. I said, so what percent? Well, anywhere from 40 to 50%. So nearly half of the criteria for a company, big companies and small businesses alike, as to where they're going to locate their business is the quality of the workforce. Quality of the workforce now, higher bar than ever, right? And it's got to be everybody. You mentioned it before we came on about so-called achievement gaps, and we know what they are, and they're mostly based on income and that type of thing. And as Lieutenant Governor, I worked on that for 8 years, finding those schools and those districts that are really able to get all their students, whether they come from advantaged backgrounds or disadvantaged backgrounds, to be able to read grade level by grade 3 and math by middle school and the 3 objectives that I talked about. That's critically important to our economic success. And so much of the success of our families, our children, and our states is based on that. And so we've got a big challenge ahead of us. And all the folks that have joined us today are part of this effort. We appreciate their efforts in leaning in to what is the most important thing in my view as we move out of this pandemic situation. And as you said to me, Steve, at the outset, these are not new issues, right? It's just a new context. And those issues have been laid bare to us once again. And so we're all going to have to get busy and do it as we move out of it. And we're going to do it by working together, getting the education establishment, education leaders, teachers, parents, and students all moving in the same direction. Here in Delaware, we're fortunate that we are small and manageable in that respect. I can't imagine what it's like in a state like Georgia and Alabama, but I suspect we'll hear a little bit more from my colleagues in those 2 states. It's good to be with both of them.
Thank you, Governor Carney. I'm not sure if oh, good. Hi, Governor Kemp. How are you?
Good afternoon. Doing great.
Thank you so much for being with us. So we're going to move straight to you because I know that you have another engagement that you've got to get to. So if I may, let me just introduce to everyone who is not living in the great state of Georgia, our governor in Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp. Governor Kemp has been behind a lot of key legislation, I think, in the past couple of years, in particular this year, around teacher recruitment. He's got a special place in his heart for education. He's got a daughter that's going into education. And I got a chance to be at a groundbreaking with him just this week as Gwinnett Technical College broke ground on a new technology facility. Governor Kemp has had a real focus on our workforce here in Georgia. And as a result, we've actually seen some really good returns and revenues that have come in recently. And so he has really been around state government for a while after he decided that he needed to get in there and stop talking about it and actually really come and make change for himself. So we are very thrilled to have him. Also, I have to mention that his wife is a real champion. Marty Kemp has been a real champion for uh, the victims of human trafficking. So between the two, you've got a real dynamic duo who are making real change in Georgia. So Governor Kemp, we are so happy to have you today and thrilled for you to listen and to hear from you about how your plan and your vision for Georgia bouncing back from COVID, and not just bouncing back to the status quo, but actually propelling forward into this new normal, as Governor Carney said.
Well, hey, thanks so much. It's great to be with the board. And I just want to thank you guys for all of your hard work, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know that's been a big help to us, and honored to be with my fellow gubernatorial colleagues today. As you all can imagine, leaders have had to make very tough choices. And when we do that, we just want to have the best information that we can. And certainly you all's work has really helped us with a lot of important data and timely research. And, as you guys can imagine, we were using all of that as we tried to make the best decisions, especially when it came to public health and education, because it's been really hand in hand in a lot of ways in everything that we've done. And we're certainly seeing a lot of positive results of that. And I think our whole country is. You mentioned our daughter, Jarrett. You can rest assured that as a fixing to be educator, she is on me every day about supporting public education and raising teacher pay and everything else. So it's really pretty exciting for us as parents to have our first child that's graduated from college and going into the workforce. I know I, for one, am very appreciative of that, but it's also exciting that she's going into education, because that is really our future. And she's just a great girl. She's going to be in a great school system, and she really loves kids. And I know that's important for our next generations to come. And I just appreciate all of you all's help in regards to that. We were very fortunate in Georgia. We started a measured reopening very early in the process, and thankfully most of our school systems did the same based on the data and science that we were getting, not only from CDC, but also what our own public health folks were recommending here. And I think that's going to pay big dividends for us down the road. Obviously, those were very difficult decisions for our school leadership and for our parents and boards and everyone else involved. And we were certainly honored to be able to participate and collaborate, but also give them a lot of tools to be able to reopen PPE, cleaning supplies, and other things. And, you mentioned the teacher pipeline legislation. We worked extremely hard on that. My staff did as well. We did that in collaboration with our school superintendents and the educational community. And that effort was really overwhelmingly bipartisan and exciting, quite honestly, because it's definitely a problem in our state, finding good educators, especially trying to figure out how to have those best educators in those toughest courses that are really critical need areas. And it did a lot of other things, encouraging our great veteran workforce that we have in Georgia to consider going into teaching, and then also allowing, and this is a 2-year piece of legislation we haven't passed yet, but we had to let it sit for a year because it's a retirement bill, but potentially allowing retired educators after a cooling off period to be able to come back and teach in the system again to help us just fill these critical needs. We're also going to be partnering with our HBCUs about making sure that, they're engaged in this process, working with the state school board and others, so that we're having, really the finest mentors and African-American leaders in education as well. That's something that we feel like is very important here in our state and in our school systems. And our HBCUs are just an incredible resource for us here in Georgia. And then also just focusing on the science of reading. And I will tell you that we're seeing really great results from that. From May 1st through July 9th, the Georgia Professional Standards Commission has already seen a large influx of increases in teacher certifications, which is exactly what we wanted. We've also been working with the PSC to cut out really a lot of government red tape and bureaucracy to kind of tear down some of the barriers to allow non-traditional type people to get into teaching that have great life experiences in other ways And we continue to focus on that here in the Peach State. You know, even though most systems in Georgia went back relatively early, all of them had a 180-day school year, and really was amazing what they did. We still definitely have a learning gap that is out there, as I know is the case in a lot of other states. And to help address this, we had a little bit of CARES Act money, or well, I guess it was GEARS money, the governor's emergency relief or education relief fund left over. And we really looked at all the things that we did with that money and decided, you know, who was the best user of this money, who had the best programs that help our kids. And I ended up taking the rest of the $15 million we had left, and I gave it to the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Georgia. And that is going to help us with learning gap, not only through the summer, but into the fall with programs this summer that won't just be, you know, playing on the playground or playing sports. It'll be educational programs along with that, keep our kids happy and active, which is an important part of it, but also to help specifically with these learning gaps. And that'll flow into the school year as well. So I'm really excited about that. And the Boys and Girls Clubs, very deserving. They've done a great job, but that's going to help kids K through 12 in 62 of our 159 counties that we have in the state. You know, it was mentioned about workforce earlier, and I couldn't agree more. Coming out of the pandemic, literally, geez, probably 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, I'm getting hit up, but we need more workers. We got to get people back in the workforce. We need a more skilled workforce. And Georgia has done a really good job over that for decades. Long before I was here, we've invested in our higher education system, our technical college system, our career technical and agricultural education programs in our high schools, and also just our Quick Start program that is really, I think, the best in the country for job training to support our corporate customers here in Georgia. But we got to continue to do more. And really, K through 12 education, in my opinion, is the first step to doing that. So that remains high on our list as well. And that's really, as the governor mentioned prior to me, that is really what drives companies' decisions to go to a state, even more so a lot of times than incentive or, you know, locations and other things, is you've got to have a workforce. If you don't have that, the project just will not work. One of the things that I recently announced that should be of interest, I know it's very exciting for me, is a partnership that we have with the Technical College System of Georgia, the Technology Association of Georgia, and Amazon Web Services, where this partnership is going to be training 5,500 Georgians for cloud computing careers, which is something we desperately need in the state. And now more than ever, preparing students in our state colleges and universities to receive these new skills trainings and other high demand technology industries is going to be very important. You know, I believe that we've got to continue to invest in that way here in Georgia and provide these great educational opportunities, because that's what our employers demand, is what our citizens deserve. And it will prove to be really, I think, our most beneficial thing that we can do to keep our economy going here, which quite honestly has been remarkable. And, you know, I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for all the partnerships we've had along with the board, but also our public health department, our private sectors, and our schools. We've all worked collaboratively, our hospitals, and many others, to figure out like how we fight through this, how we allow Georgia businesses to reopen and survive to get to this day that we're at right now. We've seen incredible economic activity in our state. Our unemployment rate has now fallen for 12 consecutive months. Of the 10 largest states, we have the lowest unemployment rate of those 10. And since March of 2020, the Economic Development Department has announced our private sector partners have created 37,000 new jobs. It's 394 projects and almost $12 billion of investment, which is, to me, I just continue to shake my head when I say that, because all of this has been going on, you know, through a global pandemic, and now as we come out of it. But in closing, let me just again thank the Southern Regional Educational Board for all your work to get us to this point, to be collaborative partners with us. We're very grateful, and I'm honored to be with you all today. And I think I'm going to throw it back to Dr. Pruitt and take a few questions.
Thank you very much. I know that you have to move along, but you brought up something I think really important, in particular around your partnership with TCSG. We know that we're living in this new world. I often refer to it as the fourth industrial revolution, because now computers and all that are working alongside us and learning with us as opposed to learning from us. Where do you, as we've gone through this pandemic and with the boom that Georgia has seen, how do you think, what's different about today that has kind of changed your perspective from when we entered the pandemic in March to today? What do you think kind of shifted your thinking on as we move into this next era?
The thing that look, there's a lot of data points you can use to explain that, but probably the best thing for me from just an elected official, and I know my colleagues would probably agree to this, you have your gut feelings in politics of just what you're seeing on the ground, what you're feeling from people. Thinking back where we were a year ago or even 6 months ago to where we are now, to me, there's just a great sense of optimism just in general out in the public. Now, that's not to mention, that's not to neglect a lot of issues that I think we're going to have. I mentioned learning gaps. There's, I think mental health issues that we're going to see, substance abuse issues, things that, a lot of the governors warned about a year ago as we went into the pandemic, that it wasn't just about fighting COVID-19. It was also these other issues that are associated with restrictions, lockdown, just other things. That's really tough when you have tough economies and tough situations like that. But to me, there's just a great sense of optimism that we're seeing in Georgia with the economy coming back, really just about every single sector now, even those that were hit hard, parts of our tourism industry, especially linked to business travel, airlines, while not back, and it won't be back till international travel opens up, they are seeing month over month growth. Our hotel restaurant people are, getting back into high demand, needing more employees. Their cash flow is much better. Our schools are having robust summer programs in person, which I think really sets the stage for us to have a very normal year when we get into the fall, if we continue vaccinating people and continue to, just do the right things and make smart decisions, which I think Georgians and Americans know what to do now. We've all learned a tremendous amount, and we have better treatments and better healthcare options because of that. But to me, that's the kind of gut feeling answer I have. I just think there's a lot of optimism, and that's good, because this time last year there were so many unknowns and so much pessimism out there. It was just a really tough time. So I'm excited that we're here and looking forward to a great summer.
Well, after going through the airport this past weekend, I can tell you that travel is definitely picked up in Atlanta, Hartsville, Jackson. Well, look, I know that you have to run, and we thank you so much for being a part of this. We're going to move to Governor Ivey, but just for the three of you, we're going to have our board meeting, our annual meeting in Atlanta in September. And all of your staffs are going to be asked for another invitation for us to actually bring the three of you and maybe another governor or two, and actually in person have a nice, true discussion. So I hope that all of you will consider that. So Governor Kemp, thank you for being with us, but I know you've got an appointment that you've got to get to.
Hey, thank y'all so much. Have a great day. God bless.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn to Governor Ivey. Governor Ivey, I have gotten to know her just over my time here. She actually is a former English teacher. She actually spent time in the classroom. And I know as governor of Alabama, Governor Ivey, of course, you have to be impartial, but I always take great pride in being able to say that I'm a fellow alum of Governor Ivey from Auburn University. So Governor Carney, when you talk about the heavyweights in SEC football, of course, I assumed that you meant Auburn. We won't talk about the other place. Governor Ivey will have to, of course, but being a good Tiger, I may not do that. But Governor Ivey has actually had a wealth of experience. She's been in the classroom She was a bank officer. She actually was assistant director for the Alabama Development Office, where she really worked to spur job creation and economic development all across the state of Alabama. And one of the things that I've always been struck with Governor Ivey has been one of the things that and I mentioned it with Governor Kemp, we have been a real push to try to think about how to align education and workforce to ensure that we have individuals who are skilled to take the jobs that are coming, in addition to, of course, trying to fill the current jobs we have. Governor Ivey has had an incredible vision of aligning education and workforce in terms of federal funding, in terms of state regulations, and it's been really impressive to watch all the work that you and your staff have done in Alabama. So thank you so much for being here and being a part of this. So we'd love to hear from you now. When you're thinking about Alabama and what we've just come through, what's your vision? Where are we headed in Alabama?
Well, good afternoon, Dr. Pruitt. I want to thank you and the SREB team for the opportunity to join Governors Carney and Kemp to discuss our approach to education and workforce development during the COVID-19 recovery. And Dr. Pruitt, I also want to thank you for your leadership and support you have provided to states during the COVID-19 pandemic and during the recovery phase. The central focus of Alabama's workforce recovery efforts in 2021 will be assisting individuals who have been displaced by COVID-19 from the most affected industry sectors. In 1965, 80% of our workforce needed only a high school education to reach self-sufficiency. Today, that number is only 35%. Moreover, 95% of the jobs created since the last recession require at least some post-secondary education. Alabama is creating stackable career paths that allow folks to transfer credentials of value toward degrees. We will be launching important initiatives this year that will be the culmination of years of work. Our skills-based job description generator and credential registry will make it easier to match employers with job seekers who possess the skills they need. And this system will make it a whole lot more transparent and easier for people to re-enter the labor force after being displaced by COVID-19. Through prudent decision-making and planning before and during the pandemic, we have guided our state through this year-long tempest, and we're coming back stronger than ever.
Thank you so much. Same question I asked Governor Carney earlier too, or Governor Kemp, and Governor Carney, I'd like to hear your response to this too. What do you see as different now? You know, how did the thinking evolve? When all this first started March 2020, we didn't know what was coming. You know, and so what do you think is the big difference now?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the need for us to double down on the work we began before the pandemic to expand access to quality early childhood education for our youngest learners and to provide access to quality post-secondary education for Alabama students and job seekers. In 2021, the Alabama First Class Pre-K program ranked as the nation's top pre-K program for 15 years in a row. And this program will add 135 new classrooms. This will bring the total number of classrooms statewide to 1,373. In April of 2018, I set a post-secondary education attainment goal for Alabama of adding 500,000 credentialed Alabamians to the workforce by 2025, which will equate to approximately 60% of Alabamians holding post-secondary credentials, degrees, and certificates of value. Alabama's attainment goal is founded on an equity imperative to expand post-secondary attainment for people with barriers to entering the workforce. We will continue using career pathways and credentials of value aligned to our in-demand jobs to reach our attainment goal and to provide multiple points of entry and exit into and out of the workplace for education for all Alabamians.
So when you think about the future, I mean, you're actually talking a lot about those key issues of where the job force is going. You know, what's going to be your advice to people about how do we not just return to the status quo? How we don't just, our goal isn't to get back to what we were in February of 2020, but actually to really go forward. You've really laid out some, especially your credentials of value initiative. Well, what would be the advice that you would give to people around that aspect?
Well, digital access and equity are key to addressing the trauma and isolation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. On July 31st of 2020, I announced that $100 million in CARES Act funding had been allocated for a public-private partnership to increase access to internet for K-12 students attending school in the fall who may need internet service for distance learning. The program, called Alabama Broadband Connectivity, or ABC, for students, provides home internet access, vouchers for families of students currently eligible for free and reduced price school meals or other income criteria. The vouchers help cover equipment and service costs for high-speed internet service from the fall through June 30, 2021. Families with children who receive free or reduced school lunch were notified via mail letter in August of 2020. The Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs, or DECA, administers the program and maintains a website to assist Alabamians and providers with questions. Providers contract with the state through DECA to provide this service using existing lines and technologies. Over 200,000 of Alabama students have been connected to broadband service through the ABC for Students program.
That's incredible. Governor Carney, same question for you. Where do you see us? What does the future hold for Delaware, and what advice are you going to give to get people in the other states thinking about that, especially around policy?
Yeah, so some of the things that Governor Ivey referred to are obviously critically important to every state. Like she mentioned early education. I think that's let me frame it this way. So we started the conversation early on by talking about achievement gaps that pre-existed the pandemic. And then we had the pandemic that was overlaid on top of that. And those gaps became kind of more obvious, and they're related to communities of color, English learners, disadvantaged students of all colors. And so prior to the pandemic, as governor in my first year, building on the work that I had done as lieutenant governor, we created an initiative we called opportunity funding. People refer to these gaps as achievement gaps. I refer to them as opportunity gaps. And so we made additional resources available to the districts to make their own decisions about whether they make an additional investment in their early education programs, whether they focus on getting teachers more trained in the science of reading and really focusing on reading programs for those children up to grade 3, whether they focus on reading and math specialists, already kind of ideas and things that were part of our budget, but we made additional resources available to districts through opportunity funding to enable to address these challenges and make these resources available. Governor Ivey and Governor Kemp both talked about career and technical education. It's critically important here in our state, as Governor Ivey says, more and more. It's a higher bar, a learning bar for entry into those kinds of careers and jobs that provide the income that one needs to support a family effectively in our respective states. And so those are critically important, and those apprenticeship-like programs that get you into the workforce right away with additional training, and then again, encouraging and making opportunities available for entry into higher ed for all the science and tech jobs that we among states compete for. Delaware is long known for those kind of jobs. We want to have one of the highest educated states in the nation, mostly around the legacy of the DuPont company here in our state, where they built their business for generations, over 200 years, on science and technology and continue to do that today. Much more diversified economy here in Delaware now with financial services, science and tech, agriculture, and others, but all requiring the kind of educational support and preparation. But first and foremost has to be addressing the learning loss that has happened over the last year. And each of the governors have mentioned that. For us, I think the key is assessment and then addressing those areas that need to be worked on through intense tutoring, if you will, which I think it's kind of one-on-one. It allows you to do it during the summer through, I heard Governor Kemp talk about Boys and Girls Clubs, great venue for getting to those students. But our districts too have to be involved in getting more children doing learning during the summertime. So catch up and then accelerate forward.
You know, one thing I know about all three of you is you have a real commitment to career and technical education and really raising the profile, I think, of that to be the fact that it's very much on the same level in terms of what we need in our society as the traditional four-year university. We need both. But we need a better balance, and maybe even right now a little bit greater focus on getting folks into the workplace, especially those that are currently in the workplace, but due to COVID may have lost their positions. So, you know, I'd like to ask just kind of one last question, and then I'm going to ask Governor Carney to take us home here. But for the both of you, you know, and this is always a little dangerous to ask this kind of question, but it should be fun to hear. And that is, you know, if you could change one thing in the education system, you know, you had, you know, the genie came out of the bottle, you were given your magic wand, whatever. What do you think that would be? I mean, how has this disruption really caused by the pandemic made it harder or easier to even make that change? So Governor Ivey, if I could start with you.
Well, as a former school teacher, I understand the importance of students being able to read proficiently by the end of third grade. 1 in 6 children who are not reading proficiently in third grade do not graduate from high school on time, a rate 4 times greater than that for proficient readers. In 2019, 53% of Alabama's 4th graders failed to reach proficiency on the state's summative reading assessment. Never have Alabama's public schools had such a large investment of state and federal funding to invest in reading proficiency gaps. Alabama's K-12 schools have received over $4 billion in additional federal funding schools over the past year. In the fiscal year FY 2021 Education Trust Fund budget provided an additional $26.9 million to support the implementation of the Alabama Literacy Act, including funding for additional reading specialists, summer school, and after-school programs. Now is the time to ensure that every child in Alabama is a proficient reader by the end of the 3rd grade.
I had a feeling that might be the place you would go. Very well said. Governor Carney, what about you? What would be the one thing that you would change, and how has this disruption possibly inhibited that?
Well, you know, Dr. Pruitt, Governor Ivey hit the nail on the head there. When I was in Congress, because there were so many of us, we were limited with the amount of time that we had to speak on the floor. And so as a way of, you know, not taking up too much time and repeating what another said, we used to say, I'd like to associate myself with the remarks of the gentleman or the gentlewoman from, in this case, Alabama. And I certainly would. My wife, Tracy, and I are fully focused, as Governor Ivey is, to make sure that all our children can read at grade level by 3rd grade. Governor Ivey has talked about the logic of that, which is indisputable in my view. And like Alabama, we have way too many students in Delaware who are not reading at grade level by grade 3. And not surprisingly, a large percentage of these students comes from disadvantaged backgrounds and are English learners. And so that would be my number one. A close second would be the flexibility to use resources, and there is quite a bit with respect to the federal support, for the districts to use best practices, whether in reading instruction, the science and reading, tutoring, intense tutoring, whatever the case may be, to reach those difficult student populations, those that need the most help. Unfortunately, there's not enough flexibility. We give a lot of local control, but not a lot of flexibility within the framework. Local control without flexibility isn't worth a lot. My colleagues in the legislature, they like to have ownership over various programs, whether it's for social emotional health or reading specialists or math specialists. They want to say this amount of money, this program has to go for that. My own preference is let's provide a source of money and districts can choose early education, reading specialists, math specialists, whatever that particular area, that particular district needs the most. And that's where the Southern Regional Educational Board can come in to identify for us those, let's do what works. Let's make investments and what works. Part of it is let's work together as a region. We're kind of on the northern edge of that region, but we're delighted to be part of it. I'm privileged to have served, not a very effectual way during the last year, but to be invited back to do a real leadership year as chair of SREB. And we appreciate, Dr. Pruitt, your leadership, all the board members and everybody involved, because you can help us really do the most important job of our governments, our state governments, which is to educate the next generation so that we can all have economic success for the families and individuals of our state. We got a lot of work to do, more so probably than any other time in our lifetimes for sure. But I'm encouraged, as Governor Kemp said, I'm as encouraged as anybody and as optimistic about the future of our states and our region.
Well said, well said. Governor Ivey, Governor Carney, thank you so much. I can only remotely in my wildest dreams imagine how busy the two of you are on a daily basis. Having been a former state superintendent myself, I know how my schedule was, and I can't even imagine what a governor deals with. So the fact that you were willing to be with us for an hour today, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for both of your leaderships within your states. From our perspective of kind of being in a little bit of a catbird seat, being able to look across our 16 states, just kudos, because we see the great work that both of you are doing and the progress that both of you are making for your respective citizens. So thank you so much for being with us.
I was tempted to sign off by saying, roll Tide and go Bulldogs.
War
War Eagle.
Eagle.
All corrected me as Auburn graduates. I'll say, go War Eagles and go Tigers, because my son's a graduate of Clemson.
Well, Clemson is kind of Auburn, but with a lake. That's the way we think about it.
I look.
So thank you.
Later.
Thank you both so much for being with us. We wish you much luck, and if there's anything that we can do to support you, SREB stands ready to do so. So thank you, and thank you to all of our participants for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.